Coordinator, Nicole D'Souza, Research Coordinator, and 3 of our students, Michaela, Tristan, and Leah. So thank you again for everyone for sharing and for being here with us today. I wanted to just share with each of you this graphic we had commissioned from a company in British Columbia called Drawing for Change. We're going to use the story of our program to help guide us through our discussion today on listening to one another, right from program beginnings, how this program all got started, through to cultural adaptation, a very integral part to this program, and then all the way up to knowledge exchange and sustainability. So today we're going to be moving through these different parts of the program. So to give a little bit of background on listening to one another to grow strong, so it's a community-driven, culturally adapted program for Indigenous youth and their families. Listening to one another fosters individual skills, connects families, and builds stronger communities. The program is rooted in the principle that family well-being is a cornerstone of individual and community wellness. Each session includes activities that are designed for the family, including meals, discussions, games, stories, as well as separate activities for youth and adults. The 14-session family program and the 6-session school program include various topics such as community history and pride, emotional regulation, bullying, substance use, and much, much more. As these topics are explored throughout the program, participants in the Listening to One Another program build their knowledge and gain valuable experiences by listening to one another. A unique and integral feature of this program is that the community culturally adapts the program to meet their needs. Additionally, each session is supported by an elder or a knowledge keeper from the community. And really what it all comes down to, what it boils down to, and how listening to one another is successful is that it is culturally adapted, and we will talk in greater detail about this cultural adaptation process and why it's so important to LTOA. The second biggest part is that this program is strength-based. So we are looking at honoring and respecting and lifting up, valuing and identifying those strengths that families and communities have. And thirdly, elders are there, knowledge keepers are present at every single session that help to not only guide the program, but also support the facilitator along with the families and the youth who are partaking in the program. So now that we have a little bit of an introduction to LTOA and what it's looking to accomplish, I want to go back a little bit and start to explore some of the program beginnings and a bit of the history of the program. So listening to one another is an adaptation of the Strengthening Families program. The Strengthening Families program was created in the 1980s by Dr. Carol Comfer to address issues of youth substance abuse in the United States. The program has since been culturally adapted to suit different contexts across the globe, including Indigenous communities in North America. Now, in 1996, Dr. Les Whitbeck, a sociologist from the University of Nebraska-Lincoln, in partnership with Indigenous communities in the US, created an Ojibwe version of the Strengthening Families program called Bizindadida, or Listening to One Another to Grow Strong. Whitbeck discovered that the adapted version of the Strengthening Families program demonstrated many positive outcomes for Indigenous youth and families who partook in the program, which then encouraged the scale up of the program for other Indigenous communities. Now, Dr. Les Whitbeck, had a partnership, a collaboration with Dr. Lawrence Kermayer, who is the PI on the Listening to One Another program. And they sort of joined forces and looked how they could bring LTOA to the Canadian context and begin engaging with Indigenous communities across Canada. From 2010 to 2018, the Listening to One Another program was funded by the Public Health Agency of Canada. And through those three distinct phases, we see the program from the very first one from 2010 to 2011. We really see this building of relationships and collaborations, not only with Indigenous communities across Canada, but also research teams from universities and community organizations set route for the successful delivery of the program to come in the coming years. And then from 2011 and 2015, phase two of the program, we really saw these longstanding partnerships and relationships, collaborations with communities and research teams explore successful program delivery across the country. And then finally, in phase three of the funding, 2015 to 2018, we really see a focus on scale up. And this is when the school-based program of Listening to One Another was created. And also we see lots of steps moving towards sustainability. So how communities continue taking on this program without the core funding from PHAC. And then in 2018, we were fortunate enough to receive funding from the Pathy Family Foundation. So that's going to allow us to continue making collaborations and partnerships with communities across Canada and continue to see wonderful programming from these communities as well. Now, this is just a little sort of snapshot of where the program has been and sort of where we're going. This map here highlights some of our partners, particularly from the PHAC grant. So we can see from coast to coast, we see lots of programming being delivered. In fact, throughout this time, from 2011 to 2018, there were 63 family programs delivered, 3 school programs delivered, and over 800 participants engaged through the Listening to One Another program. And now we can sort of capture some of our current partners. So lots of fun, happy, smiling faces here. It's so great to see these pictures. And really, just to highlight how unique these partnerships are. You know, in some cases we have hub partnerships. So we've got hubs with Cree Nation Tribal Health and the Clapham Health Services Society in BC. We also work with Eskasoni Mental Health Services or Mama Wichita in Winnipeg to really build capacity around training, and then program delivery is supported by their own funding. So we have lots of different partnerships, but all are amazing and all contribute to the program in so many different meaningful ways. Now, to talk a little bit about community engagement. So this is obviously a very integral portion to any program that's on the ground. And the success of the Listening to One Another program has really been built upon these long-standing relationships between Indigenous communities and teams across Canada. So again, that's university teams, that could be regional hubs, that's different implementing partners. Now the program follows principles of collaborative research that ensures each community is a full participant in the program at every single step. This has been accomplished through open communication, relationship building, and ongoing engagement. We sort of work at 3 different levels. For those of you who aren't aware, we have a national team that's comprised of myself and Lawrence Kermayer, Nicole D'Souza, the students, Michaela, Tristan and Leah, along with some other supports that are helping us to make sure that this program is running smoothly. And then we engage both at the regional and local level. As I had mentioned previously, we have 2 regional hubs, one in British Columbia and one in Manitoba. And those regional hubs are supported by a regional coordinator and then a team of facilitators that then engages more closely at the local level with different communities to really to train, to build capacity, to support programming, to promote, to build sustainability. And really at these local and regional levels, we see the program coming alive through the cultural adaptation process and through the engagement of participants. And just a great little quote here. And this really, we talk about the magic of this program. The greatest success that was achieved was the in-depth connections that were formed among those involved in the project. It was great to see bonds strengthen each week as we moved from week to week. And we see this, and I just wanted to highlight, we see this at, the national level, the regional level, and the local level. It's so great to have these connections that help sustain us and just make the program so much more meaningful. Now, once we've engaged with the community, or community has expressed interest in the program, we then begin to talk about the training and what that's going to look like and what that's going to feel like. Much like the cultural adaptation process, we want this training process to also feel unique and to really get at the needs of the community. So we have a couple different methods that we use in terms of our training. One that we've used for many years and has really been with us since the start of the program is sort of nationally centered training, team training, team facilitated training, excuse me. So what I mean by that is somebody from the national team. It could be the project coordinator, the research coordinator, or a group of students traveling to communities and building capacity within that regard. More recently, we still obviously use that method where we go up to different communities. We just in January, before everything sort of became a little bit more restricted, myself and Michaela traveled up to the PAW in northern Manitoba and completed a training with 3 of the communities with the Cree Nation Tribal Health Organization. So we still very much use that method, but something we're really leaning into and looking to build up is this idea of cross-community engagement, where we're having we always use the term community champions or program facilitators who have been with the program for a number of years come to travel to actually train other communities. We found that this is just a very meaningful and fruitful way to share those experiences that occur in the implementation of the program. Whether it be the successes, it could be the challenges, all of those things that really make it, that are valuable to know when taking on this program. So for example, Erin, who's the regional coordinator in British Columbia, she had traveled with us to go to Eskasoni Mental Health Services and deliver a training on the school program there. And it was so amazing to have her there to share those experiences and just sort of be real about what happens and in programming, and to sort of navigate some of the challenges that could and may arise, but also just be there to answer questions. So it's just so amazing to see that cross-community engagement, and that's really a method that we're really leaning into. Now, at the start, I had mentioned that the family program is 14 sessions. We have moved to a bit of a modular version of this program, meaning that we've broken down the 14 sessions into 3 modules. So instead of training, one day, all of these 14 sessions, we've tried to be a little bit more thoughtful and meaningful in the way that we train to ensure that we're really setting down good roots for the program to see success. So for example, in our last training that we did in the PAW, we took about, I think, 2.5 days to go through the modules, spending about a day on each module to go through each of the sessions in depth, where participants in the training can get an idea of what their roles are as a facilitator, but also they can sort of step into the shoes of what it might be like to be a participant in the program. What are some things that the participants and family and youth are going to learn, what they're going to take away from? So we really see that experiential hands-on learning from that training. Another one of our partners in Kenora, so Anishinaabe Benujji Family Services, sort of took this modular training with a bit of a different approach. And this is still something that, we can use. Again, it's up to the community that we're engaging with to express the type of training that they desire. But AFS in Kenora chose to have training on module 1, then deliver module 1, and then come to do a debrief on the implementation, and then do training for module 2. So we sort of saw that process go through all 3 of the modules. So that was a really great learning opportunity for us. And it was a great way for the staff with AFS to get comfortable with a program that they've never really had before, or delivered something of this kind. Again, just wanted to reference that we really do try to make the trainings as hands-on as possible. And, I had referenced, having participants in the training, just sort of get a feel of what it's like to not only facilitate the program, but also what some of the families they support and care for, what sort of things they're going to learn and experience as well through the program. So I'm going to hand over the mic, so to speak, to Nicole to talk us through the cultural adaptation process.
Great. Thanks, Michelle. I guess, can we move to the next slide?
Of course, yep.
So cultural adaptation, as Michelle had mentioned earlier, is one of the main foundations of our program. What it really means when we talk about cultural adaptation, it's the process of tailoring this program. So when we got the program, and as it has been adapted throughout the years from the Strengthening Families program on towards an Anishinaabe version for US First Nation communities, then over to the Canadian context. And now we're not just working with Anishinaabe communities, we're working across Canada. So the program needs to be adapted to fit the needs of the people in which it's being delivered. So this not only allows the program to, for the people running the program on the ground to have ownership and control over the process, it also allows the program to have sustainability. And that's one of the main components that we're striving for in running and implementing the program. We don't want the program to just merely fit the community for when the funds are there, for when the program is able to be implemented, but we wanted to see it have those deep roots. We wanted to see it last a long time and be sustainable without the infrastructures of the research and other components around it. So cultural adaptation in the Listening to One Another program is very diverse. It takes on different forms depending on our engagement. So Michelle had previously spoke about engaging with communities locally, regionally, and then nationally. So depending on whether we're engaging one-on-one with a single community who wants to run the program, or whether we're engaging with an organization that may be an organization that has frontline workers. The program has also been used as a tool to help frontline workers navigate their day-to-day task of dealing with families, working with families in context. So depending on the needs of communities and needs of organizations, the cultural adaptation process is very diverse. And the grounding principle is to work locally with knowledge keepers, with elders, bringing the community knowledge keepers together to take the material in the program and make it their own. We currently have 6 different versions of the Listening to One Another program that have been culturally adapted for each community. These versions are all available, or if not quite yet, will be available on our website. And that's just to say that even, for example, in interior BC, that version would look very different depending on the different communities that do take it and engage with it. Michelle, next slide.
Mm-hmm.
So some of the elements of cultural adaptation in our program really hark on several components that bring it together. So elders play a very important role in the adaptation process that helps support the material in the program, that helps support the transformation and the communication of knowledge in the program. So our program, and Michelle will go through this later on after we speak about cultural adaptation, has different modules, as she had mentioned. Each module has different lessons or themes that are brought forward, and each of these themes have different stories within it, different games, different activities. And so we have core components that more or less remain somewhat the same. The principles, the values of the program are meant to remain somewhat standardized or the same, but how that takes form in different diverging contexts is up to the communities to decide. And the elders really do play such an important role in setting forth the stories, the types of activities that the communities engage with. Language is a huge an area of culturally adapting the program. So to give you an example, Erin, our facilitator in BC, worked very closely with Ina Dunstan, an elder in the region, to adapt the listening to one another, Bizindadeda, Anishinaabe version to the local Inkklapan version. And in her community, she had mentioned there was a very deep loss of language. So working with Ina and some other elders in the community to start and understand what some of these words could mean is an ongoing reflexive process. So cultural adaptation doesn't have a set period in which this occurs. For some communities, it can happen at the beginning, when there is an advisory committee that comes together to discuss elements of the program that needs to be adapted. Other aspects of cultural adaptation arise throughout the program. And it's an ongoing process. One of the other tenets is its flexibility. In order for a program to fit the needs of a community, it really needs to be flexible. It's a slow process. It requires a lot of patience and care in its outcome. So timelines and goals are always going to be there from institutions, from funders, of how this program should be run and what are some of the outcomes and expectations. But there is a flexibility built into this. So for example, some communities, the cultural adaptation process, rather than simply changing some of the wording in the manuals, actually takes on a much longer process, sometimes even a year, to really understand those core elements coming through and being reflected in the program. And it pulls in participation from the wider community. So although there are regional coordinators, program facilitators that are really taking the program, being trained in it and delivering it, what the cultural adaptation process really looks like is a coming together of the community, that being the elders, other knowledge keepers in the communities that can speak to some of these elements that are covered in the program, some experts in different subjects coming together. And the materials that we have generated are available for everyone to use for free. Currently, they are on the website. There are some materials that are sacred. Some of the stories coming out of the communities are sacred knowledge. And so with each community, we have come up with materials that are shareable. Other communities have materials that they have for their own communities, with the more general material being shareable, but this is reflected in our facilitator manuals. We have manuals that are used, that the facilitators use during training. We have manuals that our family members get, parents and caregivers get, and we have also manuals that the kids work through, the workbooks. And so all of these materials have been culturally adapted for each context and are shareable. And so if anyone is wondering more about this process, we're happy to talk more about it later in the question and answer period, and also to share some of these materials with you all.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Nicole. I really appreciate that. Now, once a community has been trained in the program, once they have adapted the materials to suit and fit their needs, this is when we can start to really get to the magic, as I say, and see the program begin to be delivered in communities. And really what this program is it's a coming together, it's a connection, it's all these words here on the screen. It's learning, it's growing, it's exchanging, it's hearing, it's listening, it's creating a safe space. It's all of these wonderful things that occur in the program to help build and foster connections, not only within the family, but also within the community as well. I wanted to take a bit of an opportunity here to chat through some of the components of the program. So Nicole had mentioned that there are different thematic elements for each session, different parts that come together throughout each of the sessions that tie together and unite the program. So I wanted to take a moment to go through those briefly. And again, we'd be happy to share more information after, or if we want to talk a little bit more deeply about those, we can always find an avenue to do so. So I'm going to be talking from a module, like in a modular sense of our program. So going through each of the 3 modules. So module 1 is really about building that foundation. First and foremost, it's building a foundation for the participants who are engaging in the program. And that really involves, and that hinges on the fact that we want facilitators to create the safest space they can, or a safer space that they can for programming. What we know that if there's a safe space, people are going to feel more comfortable to ask questions or share experiences. So Module 1, we see that foundation being built of comfort and sharing and listening. We also see Module 1 building a foundation of values, and we see that through the different themes and the different elements built in Module 1. So we see concepts of values, we see meaningful activities that participants identify in their tree of life. We see life stages and ceremonies being discussed, culture, ideas of community history, resilience. And then we see, this shift starting to take place into more individual skills that can help us build, healthier relationships with our family, within our community, on a sports team, in the classroom, whatever it might be. So we see some ideas of balance and healthy relationships coming through. I want to take just a moment to explain that the tree of life is a component that it's a common thread through each of the 14 sessions. So at each session, the participants in the program have the opportunity to identify different parts of their tree of life. So that could be their roots, it could be their trees and branches, it's their trunk, it's the, the bird that might be there helping and watching over the tree. And each of those parts of the tree represent different aspects. So we see here in Module 1, we see family values being identified, meaningful activities that individuals may do to help nourish themselves, or activities that they would want to do together as a family to help create a stronger bond. We see ideas of culture and resilience coming forward, as well as ways to balance ourselves holistically to ensure that we can, be calm and present and all of those good things. We see, like I had mentioned, we see just a bit of a shift in Module 2, a transition to building some skills and also highlighting strengths that participants already have. So we see ourselves sharing these skills and building on these strengths. We see participants identifying emotions, looking how to solve problems, how to help others, and also ask for help, a very important concept. We learn refusal skills, and then also we talk about bullying, friendship, and communication. In the Tree of Life component for Module 2, we see participants being able to identify some techniques to help calm themselves. We see problem solving, ability to identify helpers or community resources that we can go to, that we can turn to. We talk about peer pressure and refusal skills, and then we also talk about some traditional means for conflict resolution. In Module 2, in Module 3, this is really like a bit of a celebration. We're seeing all of the hard work that participants have done in Module 1 and Module 2 really come together. This is what I say is like the little cherry on top. It's all coming together, or the bow on top of the little package. So we sort of finish with Module 11 about appreciating our difference and looking at kindness and talking about how we can prevent bullying and different kinds of bullying in our community. We look at ways we can identify supports and connection within the community, who we can go to for support, different resources that help us build us to become stronger. And then in session 14, we see everything sort of come together. And throughout sort of session 12, 13, and 14, we see the families coming together to sort of finish up their tree of life and have it come together with everyone else's tree of life in this, what we call forest of strengths. So at the very end, families are placing their tree of life on this mural, and it really comes together to show just how much stronger we are together and how much strength we can get from one another as well. So it's just a really beautiful way to express everybody's strengths and how we can all work together to become stronger. And again, I always say program implementation or delivery is really where we see the magic and those sparks and those good ripples really start to form. And I love this quote because I feel it really just does encapsulate all of the magic that happens in this program and the essence of this program and just coming together to be stronger together. And again, just here are some happy faces, from across the country, really, and from different spaces. So we see, some training here. We can see some little images of some of the Tree of Life here. So we see some participants in training, going through the Tree of Life activity and jotting down different concepts and aspects and identifying their own strengths. We see here a family, and this is from a family that Erin supported in her Listening to One Another program in BC, coming together and sharing their beautiful Tree of Life that they made. So we just see lots of joy and lots of connection here, and it's lovely to see these pictures. So now once we've finished up with program implementation, now it's time to talk about evaluation and looking at measuring the impacts. And again, I'm going to pass over the mic over to Nicole to talk us through program evaluation.
Thanks, Michelle. Okay, so briefly to touch on program evaluation. So why is it important to evaluate a program? Research is not mandatory in the implementation of the program, and with all our partners that do participate in the Listening to One Another program, we do go through a process of understanding the elements of research and also I guess going through some of the historical implications of bad research that has taken place and have harmed communities and have made communities extremely distrustful of some of the ideas of or needs for wanting to do research. But the way that we try and come to understanding the evaluation process of this program is really through a participatory model of research. So the research component doesn't start when the program is being implemented or when it ends. The research component really is built in throughout the entire process of the program. From the beginning of the partnerships up until the end of the program delivery, our participating communities and partners are very much taking the role in what they want to know from this process of learning and engaging, and what is meaningful for their own communities to get out of it. So an evaluation is really important to try and address many issues. So the issues of fit and fidelity. So as I explained before, when we culturally adapt the program, we really want to make the program appropriate and suitable for communities in context. So that's really talking about the fit of the program. At the same time, we do also want to make sure that the program continues to respect and meet the fidelity of what it aims to set out to do. So those are some of the kernels of the program that guide, including the values, some of the elements that keep the program connected and going together. So evaluation really seeks to disentangle this process of fit and fidelity. And in engaging with communities, our tenets of research have been based on the principles of OCAP. So ownership, access, possession, control. And here we work very closely with communities to decide what would work best for them. So for example, when we worked with Abenuje Anishinaabe Family Services, for them, they were working with a very large number of frontline workers in which they were getting trained. So in this circumstance, we were working with a frontline organization that wanted to know, one, was the training working? Were their facilitators getting trained in a way they felt they had the capacity to deliver the program? Two, was the actual content meaningful for the families in which their facilitators worked with? And three, was this program able to be sustainable in the long run? Can the facilitators, the frontline workers, use the program as a tool? So we worked very closely with the organization to come up with a way in which we could get regular feedback during training sessions as the program is being implemented to understand what was happening. So our research on evaluation works very closely with each community that's engaged in this to understand what their needs are, what they want to get out of it, and what is meaningful from them. And in this process, Michelle will probably go through this in the next slide, but we aim to bring all of this learning back together. We do have annual two-eyed seeing meetings, and I know, Michelle, you can talk a little bit more about that, but basically the principle of that is based on Mi'kmaq elder Albert Marshall and the idea that we see from a Western way of knowing, and we also have to appreciate and see from an Indigenous, another lens, and we bring those two lenses together, the two eyes. And this allows us to generate knowledge that is co-constructive, collaborative, and meaningful. We're not just doing research in order to publish papers. I mean, these are also valuable components, but it is to meet the needs of the community, to understand what can make the program, what are some of the challenges, what are some of the opportunities, what can other communities learn from this process, from the adaptation process, from the training process, from the implementation process, to pull some of those lessons out and bring it together in a collective space to reflect upon and use that in practice. And that takes us back into the last sort of element in the cycle. Michelle?
Yeah, that was a great transition. Thank you so much, Nicole. Just flowing right into our sort of annual knowledge exchange gathering through our TEAS meetings, or our two-eyed seeing evaluation gatherings. Thank you. That was a wonderful transition, Nicole. Thank you. And that's really one of the ways that we continue to build this idea of community of practice, to connect one another, to learn from one another, to build those relationships from coast to coast with all of our program partners. So that is one of the, I guess, biggest ways that we do that in sharing that knowledge and exchanging that knowledge. Now, this year will probably look and feel a little bit different, because obviously there are still some travel restrictions in place, but we still do hope to keep that idea alive and thriving, and we'll continue to host a two-eyed seeing evaluation gathering this year. It will be probably on Zoom, but I'm hoping that it will still just be as wonderful as ever, and still a place where we can share and learn from one another. Some other ways that we look to sort of build this community of practice are through newsletters. So if you are interested in getting our newsletters, we always put them up on our website, on our Facebook page, but you can always email me and I can add you to our mailing group. I'd be happy to do that. And then also, just as we're starting to wrap up here, and we want to leave some time for questions as well. But we're really looking to build greater connections across, across Canada and maybe even further, with events just like this. So looking at how we can, continue to connect with one another over, this socially distancing period, and continue with these webinars and share more stories from the program. So please look forward, look out for some of those notifications on some more webinars coming your way. And there's lots of ways that you can connect with us. We have, like I had mentioned, our Facebook website. Feel free to reach out with any one of us. You can follow us here along on our little journey, and hear from stories from the program. Again, thank you all for taking some time to listen and learn about the program. We've so appreciated you being here along with us. And now I would just love to sort of open it up, and maybe Nicole has throughout this been moderating some the Q&A page, but perhaps we can open it up and do some more question and answers.
Michelle, I don't know if it's possible to have, at this point, all the participants' mics unmuted.
Yeah, we could do that. I'm just going to go ahead and stop this share here just so we can see that. I can go ahead and unmute everybody if people do have questions. And if you do want to go ahead and just mute yourself, if you don't want to talk, that's totally fine. But we can go ahead and unmute everybody.
One of the questions that came up that I attempted to answer was, what is the target age range of participants?
Oh, yeah. So, Nicole, I'm just unmuting everybody. Do you mind taking that?
Sure. So, and feel free to jump in as well, Michelle.
Yes,
the
of course.
program is aimed for youth between 8 and 14 years of age. However, we have noticed that while this program and some of the research coming out of it shows its effect on this age group, that in context, when you're actually running the program on the ground, it's really hard to have families who have a diverse age group of children who may want to attend as a family, to say, well, your kids don't fall within that age bracket. So unfortunately, only 3 of the 5 kids can attend. So we've attempted to make the program as inclusive as possible so that all members of the family can attend. The content of the program is really meant for the age group that was stated, 8 to 14, but we do find that our facilitators find some really unique ways of engaging across age groups. So for example, Erin in BC, one of the techniques she used for a family that had, some younger children, toddlers, was in implementing some of the activities throughout the program. She kind of tasked the young kids with being helpers. So they were allowed to pass around the activity books, the art supplies, and so they took on a different role in the program. For the older kids, we have some youth and teenagers also participating in the program, sometimes as the caregiver and sometimes as a participant. And we really allow the facilitators locally to decide what kind of role they want families to play. So that's my understanding. Michelle, I don't know if there's anything else that...
No, I think you've captured that very well, Nicole. And again, this sort of, and Nicole, you might want to steer me back if I am getting this mixed up. But again, we kind of come back to these discussions around fit and fidelity. And originally, the program from Strengthening Families, and then from LTOA in the States is running a randomized controlled trial of the program. So the age of the participants is important to follow along with that fit of the program. However, we've listened to a lot of our community partners, and that just doesn't always fit that age group of 10 to 14. It just doesn't always fit. So we want to make sure that this program is inclusive, and like Nicole had said, finding different roles for some of the younger ones or some of the older teenagers who can assist with caregiving. There's lots of different ways that we can navigate that. So yeah, I hope that answers the question. I see another question here from Catherine. I'm curious if all the evaluation is locally driven and guided by the priorities of each community, or if there's any national evaluation framework to look at the impact of the program. Nicole, did you want to take that one?
Sure. So Catherine, basically, when the program was funded under the Public Health Agency of Canada, there was a national evaluation framework. At that point, at the earlier stages of the program, we were trying to capture the impact the program was making on families, on youth. So it was run as a controlled trial of sorts, where each of the participating communities at the time had a series of questionnaires that the families and youth would answer periodically before the program started, during the program, and then after the program, to kind of capture some of the elements of change. So some of the theories of change that were happening throughout the program. One of our challenges with that was that it was quite cumbersome, and our program is being implemented across the country, and sometimes very geographically isolated regions of the country. This was almost 10 years ago, so of course technology and other resources do aid in that process now, but at the time, to receive those questionnaires, which were printed, mailed back to us, we had a hard time capturing a lot of that information. And also, if you think about how programs are run, these are 3-hour programs. Each session is about 2 to 3 hours. And then having participants answer these questionnaires after the session, and then having the facilitator fill out a fidelity tracking form, really was hard to keep that process sustainable and ongoing. So we do have a national impact evaluation, but what we have found is that in trying to understand how the tenets of the program work locally, we've been engaged in more qualitative work, more participatory research, where it is generally driven through some key questions that we're asking about training, about adaptation, but it then takes its own form locally, whether that is an evaluation that a facilitator organizes, that's an art-based activity, or a focus group, or some follow-up questions and interviews with participants or facilitators in the program. It really is a local adaptation. We do have themes that we're interested in that do run nationally. So I hope that answers your question, Catherine.
Thank you so much, Nicole. We just have another question here. Is this program available in French? Yes, we do have French translations done on the program. We are still working with them. It's not quite published yet, but for the individual who did ask that question, feel free to touch base with us, and we can, and once that is done, keep checking back on our website, or feel free to email me, and be happy to share along those versions of French once they're 100% finalized. So.
And just to add to that, Michelle, we recently had each of the sessions of the program has a summary video that facilitators can watch to understand what the session will cover. And we do now have the entire program summary videos available in French.
Thank you so much. Thanks, Nicole. We have another question here from Lori. Is there a way to find out when these programs are running in a community? My service provides largely telehealth-based support in Manitoba, and would be interested into knowing who and when to promote this program should it be running in the fall. For sure. They're definitely promoted more locally. We work with Cree Nation Tribal Health in Manitoba. They're our hub are there, and then they work with different communities that are serviced through Cree Nation Tribal Health. Again, they do promote more locally. However, if it's fine with facilitators who are running the program, should it be up and running in the fall, and fingers crossed things will hopefully get back to normal soon. But if community partners are comfortable with sharing that information, for sure we can post that up on our Facebook, on our social media, Twitter, all of that sort of things, or we can put you into contact with a regional coordinator in the PA in Manitoba, if that works, Lori. You can always email me as well, and I'll put my email up at the end, and we can make those connections for sure. Hopefully that answers that question.
And just to touch on that as well, Michelle, for maybe people who may be interested in the program, and in terms of what's happening right now with COVID, yes, and the physical distancing, we are trying to get elements of this program available for remote access. So as Michelle said, the Tree of Life is one of the activities that is a running thread throughout the program, and we're currently working with the team and our community partners to transform some of these elements into either an online delivery or other modalities of delivery, whether that's an art-based activities that's delivered with, we know some of the organizations are delivering food to communities, and so we're thinking, okay, could we put some of our art kits in with the delivery? So we're thinking through this with some of the communities we're working with to make elements of this program available to keep the connection between communities and families as strong as they can be without the program being able to run in its full capacity right now.
Thank you for noting that. I really appreciate that. Nicole, we have a great question from Chad, and I'm hoping, Chad, that I can answer this for you. So thanks for sharing this amazing program and its foundations. Can you tell me, has there been, or could it be adapted for an urban context where there are many people from many different nations participating? Fantastic question. So this was before I was in the role. And Nicole, you might just have to sort of jump in and refresh my memory here. But I believe it was Eli, he was a gentleman working on the program, had worked with Mama Wichita in Winnipeg, who is an urban Indigenous organization. I think Shonda's on the webinar as well, and maybe if she has anything else to add, she can add if she feels comfortable, but no pressure, Shonda. But definitely there is that possibility. I'm not sure if, I know that the training occurred with Mama Wichita, but I'm not sure if there was actually if it was culturally adapted or how that process worked. I'm sorry, Chad, I don't have the perfect answer for you, but I believe that it could work. Nicole, do you want to?
Sure. I too don't have the actual specific answer. I do feel while the program, we do have multiple versions of it. Your question is very valuable because most of our programs have been taking place in First Nation communities in context, but we haven't had the opportunity to see the program completely be delivered in capacity in an urban setting. So this would be something in which would be interesting to look at to see what elements of the materials that we currently have can be used, what would need to be adapted, and how it can be adapted, pulling from the various versions we have, and what that would actually look like in context. So Chad, if you are interested in maybe being connected, we can potentially work with some of our community partners to talk about what that could look like.
And I'm just going to put up just email here again, just so feel free to reach out, and we would love to hear from you guys again, and to continue keeping these connections. And just in the sake of time here, we've reached our 1 hour, so we want to make sure that if other people have other engagements to get to, that they can get to those. But please look out for some more opportunities. We're hoping to do a webinar series where we're sharing different parts of the program, from cultural safety to different aspects of evaluation to even just some more wellness based webinars where we can look at creating safe spaces or self-care for facilitators, that sort of thing. So if you do have ideas or want to learn about something more, feel free to also shoot those ideas our way. Again, you can reach me at the email address on the screen, LTOA National Coordinator at gmail.com. Would love to hear from you. We'll put up the recording again on our Facebook and on our website. And share it through email, so you can hopefully share that with your networks as well. And thank you again for taking the time and learning about listening to one another. It's been a wonderful afternoon, and we've appreciated you so much being here. So thank you again, and hopefully you all have a wonderful day.